Hello everyone, welcome to another video in this full stack Flutter development series where we are looking at implementing a food ordering app using Flutter, Node.js and MongoDB. If it is your first time here, please consider subscribing and also viewing the previous video so that you can get an idea as to what we are doing. We are currently in the authentication module, and now in this video we'll be creating our API and also writing a few tests, a few unit tests for this module. So here is our API contract or interface, which have two methods, sign in and sign up. We'll be using the HTTP client to handle our requests to those backend endpoints. And so we'll go into our pubspec YAML file and I'll use pubspec assist to install HTTP, and I'll search for that package and I'll install the HTTP package. For testing, I'll also install the Mockito package so that we can create mock objects. So Mockito, and I'll move this and put it under my dev dependencies. So Mockito as a part of the dev dependencies and HTTP as a part of the regular dependencies. So now I'll create my auth API class, auth API, and this class will implement the auth API contracts. So implements iAuth API. Quickly override those two methods, and this result package should come from the async Dart. And also I want these paths to be relative. So for my auth API, I'll be using the HTTP client. So let me import HTTP HTTP. Well, it seems as if the package is not installed, so let me run the pubspec, save the pubspec YAML file again and install it. So the issue is I installed the HTTP package and the Mockito package in the wrong pubspec YAML file. So I'm using the pubspec YAML file for the main Flutter application instead of the one for my generated auth module. So here I'll just go inside the one in the auth module and I'll remove this and put it in the auth module. So HTTP And also in my dev dependency, I want Mojito. Let me save that. Save. And now I should be able to import HTTP. And so I want an HTTP client for my dependency, and also the base URL for the endpoints. I want the base URL as dependencies, and I'll use constructor injection to get these in. So I want the client and also the URL. So I put the URL first and then the client. So now we have our client and our base URL. So for our sign in method, we'll be returning a token string whenever the sign-in occurs successfully, or whenever there's the call to the sign-in endpoint is successful. So I'm going to create the URL for the sign-in endpoint, or I'm just going to call it endpoint, and it would be the base URL and I'm going to say the name of the module and the method, which is sign in. So the module is auth and the method is sign in. So I'm going to create the endpoint and I'm going to call the client to make a request or to post to that endpoint. So I'm going to say client post, and I'm going to post to the endpoint and pass in for the body the credential mapped to a JSON object. Then I'm going to create a mapper with a toJSON method that will accept the credential. And create a JSON object from it. So again, I'm going to create another class here. I'm just going to call it mapper. And inside the mapper, I'm going to have a static method. So mapper, I want a static method to JSON. And this method will accept a credential. And will create a JSON from its properties. So for the return type, I want string dynamic, since it's a JSON object. And now I'm going to say return a JSON object, and this JSON object will have the properties of the credential. So there will be a type, it will be credential auth type, which is type. Then there will be the name, credential name, the email, credential email, and then the password. So there our mapper will take the credential object or domain model and will create a JSON object from its properties. So now let us import this mapper inside here, and then the body of the post method to this endpoint will be a JSON object with those properties from our credential. So now we make the post call, and now we must do something with the result. So what I'm going to do is I am going to create a method that handles the post calls. So I'm going to say return, and I'm going to await. I'm going to make this an async method. So I'm going to await. I'm going to create a private method, post credential, which will accept the endpoint and the credential. So now if I create this method, post credential, which accepts a string endpoint, and also a credential. This method will now handle the post and process the response. So I'm going to say response equal await the client, or what I had earlier. Let me paste. So I have the client endpoint and the body. So return a future results string. So for my response, I'm going to say if the response, if the status code is not 200, then I'm just gonna return an error. So result error. I'm just gonna say server error. Else, I'm going to get the JSON result from the body of the response. So JSON decode and the response, the body of the response. And then I am going to return from the JSON. I'm going to strip out the auth token. So if it is not equal null, then I'm going to return a result with the value of that token string. So JSON auth token, else I am going to return an error. So this error will have the message property of the returned JSON object. So there we have our post credential for handling post request to the endpoint with our credential. And so for our sign up method, it is basically the same thing, but only the endpoint will be different. So the endpoint would now be the base URL with the module name, and now it would be, for the method name, sign up. And then I'll return and I'll call it post credential and pass it the endpoint and the credential. And now we have our sign in and our sign up API calls. So let us now see how we can test these API calls to ensure that they are executing as we expected. I'll go into my test folder. I will create another folder and I'll call it infra, and then another folder called API. Then I will create my auth API test. So here I'll create my test. Import my test library. Now I'll create a mock client HTTP client. Let me import HTTP. So my mock client will implement HTTP client. Now import Mockito. So for my test, I will create the dependencies. So I'll create the mock client. I will create the auth API, which is my system under test. And inside my setup method, I will instantiate the client. And my SUT. And I'll pass it some base URL. I'll just say base URL. And my mock client. So now for our tests, for the sign in method, I am going to create a credential. So I'll say var credential. Now give it a auth type email. give it an email, email at email. And perhaps some password. So I'll test for my error cases first. So one of the error cases is that it should return error when the status code is not 200. And I set up my Mockito client so that whenever the post method is called, any URL and the body, any named parameter, body, then I want to answer, since it's async, I want to answer with an HTTP response object. And this response object will have an empty body and a status code of 404. So when I call sign in on the SUT, pass it the credential. Then for my assertions, I am expecting that the result will be an error. So is a, for my matcher, error result. So it must be an error result that is returned. Now again, this error result is from the async Dart package. So this is my first test that I am expecting that an error should be returned when the status code from the client is not 200. So if I should run this test, as you can see, the test is now passing. So that is our first test in terms of the error case. I'm going to copy this test again. And for another error case, I expect that it should throw an error when the status code is 200, but the JSON object is malformed JSON. And malformed in the sense that the auth token here, this auth token is not present. So meaning there was an error creating the token from the API. So I want to return 200 here, but still a bad JSON here. And if I should run this, I expect it to pass. So there we have a passing test. So those are our two error cases. And now for our success case, it should return a token string when successful. So for our response, no, instead of returning a malformed JSON, what we're going to return is, I'm going to say var token string equal to some random letters. And now I'm going to say JSON encode, and I'm going to encode this JSON with the property auth token, and I'm going to pass it the token string. So there we have our JSON encode. So whenever the post method is called, we're going to return a response with the auth token JSON and the token string. So now I'm going to expect that the result as a value should be equal to the token string. So let us run this test. And now we have a passing test. So we have tested the sign-in method of our auth API. You can go ahead and test the sign-up method because it's basically the same thing, basically the same test cases, but you can go ahead and write those tests for yourselves. So I'm going to stop here for now, and in the next video we'll be looking at implementing our backend using Node.js and TypeScript. So you can get yourself ready by installing Node.js, by installing TypeScript on your machine, so that in the next video you will be ready to go. So thank you guys for watching again, and see you in the next one. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.